Hi guys, so I just wanted to give you guys a quick video going over this homework 319. I'm seeing some common questions on your submissions, and thank you for those of you who on your submissions you're writing those questions. Also, I am putting in comments or writing on your assignment itself, so make sure that you have your notifications turned on Canvas so that you see if we are writing those comments to you. So the biggest thing that I'm seeing is you guys are getting stuck on these shifts. So what I would like to do is show you guys some calculator strategies on how you could kind of just check what this graph should look like. That way you know that you're doing it correctly. So let me turn on my camera. All right, first thing that I want you guys to do, your calculator should be in radian mode. So if it is not, please go to mode, go to radians and hit enter. I'll show you what it does if it is in degree mode. So we could go to our y equals and please type in this question, 3 sine of x minus pi. Now, if you hit graph, you can actually see this graph. So a few things that I want to show you with this. The first thing, if you were not on the right mode and we were actually in degree mode, if you tried to graph this, we know that that is not what our graph looks like. So that is why we need to be in this radian mode. Actually, I'm going to keep it in degree mode and show you that if you were in degree mode, you could always do zoom. Choice 7 is trig, and it'll convert those like radians to degrees so that you can actually graph it and see what it looks like. So those are a few options. I always like to be in my radian mode. That way we could play with our window and other things. So I put it back into radians. I'm going to look at my graph. Woo, crazy things going on. 1 second. Let's quit out of this. So that's because I'm in trig. Zoom 6. Standard window. Okay. So this doesn't exactly look like your graph does on there because there's a little bit more of it. So what I want to show you is that you could actually play with your window. If I go to window, they give you a domain on this. So they tell you to go from 0 to 2 pi. So on your x, I'm going to go from 0. And because I'm in that radian, I could actually type in 2 pi. And I'll show you the decimal version of that. You can scale is what you're counting by. So if you found that your critical value interval was pi divided by 2, you could type that in and you'll kind of see those tick marks for the critical values as well. So I'm going to now go to graph. And why I think that this is helpful is that you can see exactly what your graph should have, because now I have it on the exact domain. So I see that it's going to start at my origin, it's going to go down first because of that shift, then it's going to go up first, and it's going to stop there. So this is the snippet of the picture that you should have on your graph. You can play with your window if you know your graph goes with your y values and you know your range is -3 to 3. You could play with that also so that you have an exact picture of what that would look like. So what I'd like you to do is try that to check your second question on the homework. So again, go back to your y equals. You're going to type in -2 cosine of 1/2 x, that's in parentheses, and then +3. If we hit graph. Okay, now that doesn't really look like a piece of a sine or a cosine curve to me. So what you do need to do is go to your window. This graph asks you to graph from -2 pi to 2 pi. Scale on this one, your critical value interval was pi. And I'm going to hit, let's change my y maximum and minimum. I know that my highest point was 5 and my lowest point was -1. I'm actually just going to make this 10 and, I don't know, -10. That way we just see a little bit more of it also. So because this graph was not shifted, but it was a negative cosine, it does start at its minimum and then goes up to its maximum. Like that, and same on the other side. So I just like this as a resource to help you see, okay, this is kind of what my graph should look like. Maybe that's not the exact scale you use, but you see the shape of your graph. I hope that that helps, and for any of these sine or cosine graphs, you can put them into your calculator. Lastly, I do just want to go over question number 3 because I have a lot of you guys asking me questions on that. So let me take a second and open that up for you. All right, on question number 3, they ask you to graph 2 cycles of a cosine function with an amplitude of 1. So that means wherever my midline is, it's going to go up 1 and down 1, and a period of 2 pi over 3. Now, I think we're still confusing period and frequency. Period, whenever you see this, is the length of one cycle. So if I have this cosine graph, wherever this is going to be, this one cycle is going to be in 2 pi over 3. Okay, let's take a look at what this tells me. My midline is y equals -2. So I'm going to start setting up my axes, and I'm going to make my midline. I'm going to count each box as just 1. Let's say this is -2. And let's start by just putting that midline there, which a lot of you guys did first, and that looks great. Okay, they also tell me that it needs to pass through this point 0, -1, which is right here. So I know that has to be a point. This is a cosine function. So I know that my cosine function starts at its maximum, goes to its midline, minimum, midline, maximum. So what I do need to know, my amplitude is 1, which makes sense. If this is my midline, I'm going to go up 1 box, that passes through that point, and I'm also going to go down 1 box, that's going to be my lowest value. So I'd like to kind of set up my maximum and minimum on this. So this point that they told me to graph, this is going to be where my max then is going to be. And then this is going to be where my minimum is going to be. Now, if you counted by a different amount of boxes, that is fine. And now we can start graphing. So I'm going to show you guys 2 ways that you can do this. If you know that this is your period, this 2 pi over 3, if you just do your critical values, I know go box, 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 and 1 box, and I have this cosine graph here. As long as you label one part on your x-axis and you're telling me that period is 2 pi over 3, and then you go the other way since they want 2 cycles, or you could continue to go that way. Let's just go this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, if I went right and that was 2 pi over 3 for 1 cycle, this is going to be -2 pi over 3 for 1 cycle. And that is 100% one way that you can do this. I'm actually going to completely erase this and just show you guys another way or another approach of how you could do this. But I think this is the easiest way, not trying to get stuck on that phrase period. Period just tells me the length of 1 cycle. So here was my 1 cycle, and this distance is 2 pi over 3. So I'm going to try one more way just to kind of show you and different options on which you can do this. So I'm going to set everything else up the same. I'm going to actually count by 2 boxes. So this looks a little bigger. So this is -1. This is -2. I know my midline is here at -2. And I know that I have this point at 0, -1. Now, if you wanted to set up all of your values, your critical values on the axes, I could do 2 pi over 3 and divide that by 4. Now, when I divide by 4, that's the same thing as multiplying by 1/4. When I do this, I get 2 pi over 12, which is equal to pi over 6. This is what I'm going to now count my x-axes by. So on my first one, I have pi over 6, then I have 2 pi over 6, then I have 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6. Now, if you want to reduce these, you absolutely can. So usually I write them on the side. I just went right into graphing it. So 2 over 6, this could reduce to pi over 3. This can reduce to pi over 2. And this can reduce to 2 pi over 3. Just going to clean this up a little. Okay, if that's how my axis is set up on the right-hand side, I mean, I guess you could do this a few ways. I'm going to show you doing it on the left-hand side, then I'll show you a few other ways that you can actually get full credit for this. So I'm starting at my maximum. I'm going to cross here at its midline, next critical value, minimum, next critical value, midline, next critical value, maximum. That is my graph. They did want 2 cycles, so I'm going to do the same over on this side. Negative pi over 6, negative pi over 3, negative pi over 2, and 2 pi over 3. I'm going to continue. So I'm going to go back to its midline, minimum, midline, and maximum. So that is another way that you could have graphed this if you really wanted to show all of those critical values there. The last thing I want to show you is that you didn't have to do 1 cycle on one side and 1 cycle on the other side. You could have done all of those cycles on the right-hand side or all the cycles on your left-hand side. You would just need to set your axes up differently. So I'm going to take these, instead of counting by 2 boxes, let's say I counted by 1 box. These are very squished. So if you did count 2 cycles, I'm just going to make these all smaller so we can actually see it. So if I did count on by doing 2 cycles on the one side, I would need to just continue graphing this. Ooh, crazy things happening here. Okay, 2 pi over 3. We are good. Let's erase all of this and let's show you one more option on how to graph these. So if my critical value is pi over 6, I had pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6. That was my 1 cycle, but I can continue 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6. I'm not going to reduce these just to save some time, but you absolutely can. So if I continue counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Throw these right on my scale here. So if I wanted to do my 1 cycle here, again, here is -1, here is -2. This was my midline. Had this point here. I would go down, down, up, up, down, down, up, up. So I 100% could have my 2 cycles on that side. Again, multiple ways that you could do this. You also, if you had 2 cycles on this side, that's perfectly fine. Whatever you feel comfortable with, as long as you met all of these things of having 2 cycles, amplitude of 1, period of 2 pi over 3, and y equals -2, and passing through that point. All right, my friends, I hope that this helped you. I will be making some more videos going over some other questions. Hope you guys have a great one. Bye.